Welcome to Make a Path Presents. I'm Ronnie Hayes, and today, let's talk Outcast Episode 8 of Season 1. Now, first, right off the bat, you might have noticed something a little different with the audio. This is the new microphone. Finally got it in today, and for these videos where I'm showing images and I'm not on camera, I will be using this microphone, so I'm really hoping you guys like the quality. I still have to tinker around with a few settings, but let's get right into this. This has got to be the best episode so far, in my opinion. The script was tight, the pacing was on point, and it was very enjoyable. And there was a lot of character interactions that I truly loved, and quite a few reveals, actually. And let's start with the best one of all. I think the best overall, with the best character interaction and the best reveals at the same time, because I quite liked Megan and Kyle's interactions later on, the confession, let's call it. But let's back it up somewhat and talk about Kyle and Sydney. Now, I thought this was explosive while being contained at the same time. Funny because it takes place in a jail cell, but Sydney reveals that it's actually hard, and this was information that we could have speculated earlier, but it's nice getting that confirmation now given. That's if you believe Sydney. At this point, I'm just going to believe him. I think he's telling the truth again at this point, because you got to keep some, skepticism there, because he could be full of shit. We don't know. We don't know his intentions, you know what I mean? Anyway, so Sydney reveals that it's hard in the beginning, and that's probably why Kyle's mother was just a crazy bitch. Just got possessed and started eating dirt and then beat him up and went nuts. Anyway, he also talks about if Kyle would have waited, they could have possibly coexisted, which would have been better than, because Kyle's like, what are you kidding me? Sydney's like, and he kind of has a point. He's like, well, what's better? Your mom's laying in a bed just drooling. She, instead of having nothing, you could have at least had a little bit. She's still inside there somewhere, you know what I mean? But Kyle ruined it and eliminated a part of her, ripped it out of her. This episode gave us some of Sydney's backstory to confirm what he was saying, which is also why I believe some of what, or most of what Sydney's saying, because the backstory, I feel like it wouldn't lie. Sydney, verbally, what he's telling us, I feel like he could be lying, because if he's lying to Kyle, he's lying to us. But his backstory, I don't feel like the creators would make that a lie. You know what I mean? Because it's too confusing if the backstory's a lie. But anyway, the backstory reveals that he was a mean, sick bastard, and I loved the setup in this episode by building that visually. Now, this was before, when he was a serial killer or serial predator. He worked in an area where he had access to children, and he also could spy on them undercover. I mean, they truly set this up with where he worked, even the foreshadowing with the kid picking out the handcuffs. And this was the same kid, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was the same kid later on we would see that he was the one abducted. Now, when they show Sydney as Sydney before he was possessed, and he's sitting down, meticulous apartment, the music is playing, we see all his books on the shelf, we see inside his fridge is all neatly organized, and they say some serial killers have like some OCD, some of them are real clean, they have these certain characteristics, and they showed this just visually and subtly by Sydney getting up, or eating, getting up, and then getting a popsicle out, and then the sick, sadistic reveal of the kid being tied up. I think they did a tremendous job piecing that all together. Literally everything we're seeing on screen is an important part of the story, or it's a telling piece of information. I loved it. It was still fucked up, you know what I'm saying? But as far as the storytelling, though, they knocked it out of the park. Now, for the comic book fans, yes, they have hinted in the recent issue about a sick backstory for Sydney, but we have not seen it yet. Now moving over to Mark and Megan, we've seen couples bicker and bitch all the time on TV, so I like that they kept it short, and they also made a nice, powerful resolution without going into too much story. It didn't take up too much time, it took up just enough. And then we get the Megan and Kyle confession, and again, it didn't take up too much time, but it was really powerful, and I feel like this was even more powerful than the comic. It gave the character of Megan the truth that she's been probably wondering wondering about what the hell really happened. And it also, which I think was the most powerful moment, it also revealed why Kyle was keeping it a secret. And to be honest, I always thought, I really hope they make that make sense. And I think they did it in a powerful way. And again, it fits, and it fits good. He knows Allison. He knows this is a woman who couldn't live with that truth, even though, you know, she wasn't responsible, even though she was possessed. She just couldn't live with that. So I love what they did here. And again, it was a brief conversation. They did not fill half this episode with, you know, build up to this conversation. We have been building up piece by piece this whole time, and I'm glad they just went right in there, gave us what we needed, and got out of there. And also, they give us some humor in two parts, specifically off the top of my head. The one where, and it's subtle, Kyle's coming off the porch and he tells his daughter, just use a lot of ketchup. And his daughter's like, oh no. You know what I mean? Because he just burnt the shit out of the food, I guess. And then when he talks about doing something silly with her grandmother's hair, little bits of humor sprinkled in here was really good. I thought it actually contrasted with the dark tone of the story pretty well. Now, we have Reverend Anderson taking a nosedive throughout this episode, and sometimes I feel like it's a little bit more of his ego that is shining through that is something I don't like about him. It's a characteristic that I can't stand with this character, and I'm hoping that he can nip that in the butt, because I feel like he would be a stronger character once he gets over that bit of ego. But he also brings some excitement to the screen, because you're watching him, and you're watching him pick up Kate Ogden, and you know he just had a conversation with the chief, and you know damn well the chief told him about Kate. So you're like, wait a minute, what is this crazy bastard gonna do? You know what I mean? And then he tackles the bitch. I'm like, what is the matter with you? Preacher, what are you're losing your shit, you know what I mean? He has to know, like, okay, these are demons. Not everyone's gonna believe them, but I guess in this town, most people will, you know, because some crazy shit is going on. So he tackles Kate, and they bring her into Kyle's home, and then they transition from here to Kate's husband looking for him, and they have a really powerful scene. And this is what I'm talking about in Outcast, what they do with, you know, the usual generic possession story. They take what we've already had in a possession story, and they add a twist to it that truly adds like a different ingredient to the sauce, so to speak. The firefighter chief confesses that he wants to spend the rest of his life with this new possessed Kate. Not the old Kate. This new Kate has won him over. And in my mind, when I'm looking back on it, I can't remember ever watching a possession story, whether it was in a movie or a show or whatever, where they had something similar to this. So it was completely new and refreshing in my eyes, and I thought it was a wonderful new take on this old style story, you know what I mean? I thought that was great, because they're really diving deep with these characters, and it's not so simple. Before it was simple. Demon is in a person, you get the demon out. But it's not that simple, because the demon doesn't want to leave in this case. He doesn't want to get out of Kate. And Kate and the demon, so far that we can tell, they're finding a way to coexist. And not only that, the husband does not want this demon out of Kate. The husband is happy with the situation. They're even helping other people transition, and that was the whole bullshit with the trailer, you know. And I think he said like a half a dozen people that he are infected with this, you know, demon presence, or the dark element, whatever the hell we're calling it. And I love that new twist in the story. Now, I do agree, and this is what makes it wonderful, where you have all these characters and you can really sympathize with all their points. And you have Reverend Anderson, even though he's taken a nosedive and some of his ego rubs me the wrong way, you definitely feel him when he's saying, this is either going to backfire, you know what I'm saying? Or what about the Kate inside? Like, me personally, like, I don't want to be possessed by a demon, and if other people are like, well, he's not that big of an asshole anymore, you know, it's fine. I don't want the demon in me, so how does Kate feel? So you get it. You feel where everyone's coming from, and it's a more complex situation than simply being possessed. Bring that demon out. Now, the only one flaw I will find or pick out in an otherwise tremendous episode. I love this episode. When I said this was probably one of the best episodes, I was not bullshitting. In my opinion, this is a standout episode, and this one is going to be really hard to beat. everything that was happening was just A+, between the actors, the story, the pacing, from the sound to the music. Everything they did in this episode was a complete and utter win. So it's going to be hard to trump an episode like this. Now, with the one flaw, however, I truly wish instead of having Anderson and Kyle get into that fight, they would have at least had Kyle mention to Reverend Anderson that, listen, it's not as simple as fixing them. Now, we did see them fix the big guy, or that's what it looked like. It looked like they fixed that big guy. Even the big guy later was calm and talking about the warmth, but there was just something there that maybe something's still lurking. Maybe it was a new spirit, so it didn't have time to connect. I don't know. But Sydney, if we believe him, once you pull the spirit out of them, or the demon out, whatever's inside them, you take a part of them out. So if that's the case, maybe they needed Kyle to tell Reverend Anderson, like, listen, we can't just do this because we can actually harm Kate. And Kyle didn't say that. And now I know it would just be repeating what Sydney said, but I feel like it was a total letdown in that conversation, and he should have at least told Reverend Anderson. Reverend Anderson definitely could have came back with, we're not listening to Sydney, he's the enemy. Why would we listen to the enemy? And that would have been completely fine. But just for the fact that Kyle didn't even bring that up, that was kind of like a low point in my opinion. It felt like that would be something Kyle would immediately bring up, like, listen, we can't do this now because we could fuck her up. So let's fall back a little bit and figure out how to do this without harming Kate. But again, one little flaw in an otherwise flawless episode. So you let me know, what did you think about this episode of Outcast? Put your thoughts and opinions down in that comment box. I'm done talking. It's your turn.
Subscribe now.